The afternoon sun, usually a welcome visitor in her humble home, now seemed to cast only longer shadows, each one mirroring the growing dread in her heart. Her hands, calloused from years of service and now trembling, clutched a worn piece of parchment, a summons from the moneylender. He was coming, and not just for the money she didn't have. He was coming for her sons. The thought alone was a cold, sharp blade twisting in her gut. This was the widow of a man who had served the prophet Elisha faithfully. Now, in her grief, she was left with nothing but overwhelming debt. The law of the time was clear and unforgiving. If you couldn't pay, your children could be taken as slaves to settle the account. She was a mother facing the unthinkable, staring into an abyss of despair. In her desperation, she turned to the only source of hope she knew, the prophet Elisha, her late husband's mentor and friend. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was a raw whisper, barely audible through her suppressed sobs. "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But now the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves." Elisha, his gaze gentle but piercing, listened patiently. The weight of her crisis was palpable, the fear she carried a suffocating cloak. Then he asked a question that must have seemed utterly out of place in her moment of crisis, almost mundane amidst such profound despair. "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" What did she have? Emptiness, mostly. A gnawing ache of fear. A silent, echoing home where laughter once resided. But then, a flicker of memory, a small, almost insignificant detail. "Your servant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil." Just one. A small, seemingly insignificant amount, perhaps enough for a lamp or two, certainly not enough to pay off a crushing debt or save her children. It was, in essence, her last drop. But Elisha's eyes held a different light, a knowing glimmer of divine possibility. He gave her instructions that must have sounded utterly baffling, perhaps even absurd in their simplicity. "Go, borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. Then go in, shut the door behind you and your sons, and pour into all those vessels, and when one is full, set it aside." Imagine the scene. The widow, perhaps a flicker of hope mingled with profound bewilderment, gathers her sons. They go from door to door, explaining their strange request. "Empty jars, as many as you have." Perhaps neighbors offered sympathetic glances, or curious ones, wondering what new eccentricities had befallen the prophet's widow. Yet, despite the strangeness, they complied, perhaps out of respect for her late husband, or simply pity. Back in her small home, the door was shut, sealing them in with their fear, their single jar of oil, and the prophet's incredible, audacious instruction. She picked up her jar, the last visible remnant of hope, and began to pour. Into the first empty vessel, then the next. And something extraordinary happened. The oil flowed, not in a trickle, not with a struggle, but a steady, unfaltering stream. Her sons, initially perhaps hesitant or even amused by the absurdity of the task, now moved with a growing sense of urgency and awe. "Another one, Mother. This one's empty. This one too." The air filled with the quiet sloshing sound of oil filling clay, a symphony of abundance. Jar after jar, they brought them forward, and jar after jar, the oil flowed. The little jar in her hand never seemed to diminish. It defied logic, defied gravity, defied every known law of nature. The flow only ceased when the last empty jar was filled, not when the oil ran out, but when the containers ran out. The house, once echoing with scarcity, was now filled with the silent, shimmering testimony of God's limitless provision. It was a tangible, overflowing answer to her desperate plea. She returned to Elisha, no longer burdened by despair, but glowing with a quiet, astonished joy. Elisha's final instruction was simple and powerful. "Go, sell the oil,
pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest. Think about that for a moment. Not just enough to pay the debt, to simply break even and avoid enslavement. No, this was far more. It was enough to pay the debt and then live on the rest. A new beginning, a foundation for a future, all from one tiny jar. From one tiny jar, a mountain of provision. This ancient story, tucked away in the books of Kings, holds such profound lessons for us today. It's a vivid illustration of God's miraculous provision, a testament to His ability to take the last drop and make it limitless. The widow had so little, yet in her obedience and faith, that little became everything she needed and more. His provision often exceeds our immediate need, bringing not just deliverance but also abundance. It encourages us to trust Him, even when the instructions seem unconventional, even when the path ahead is unclear. The miracle wasn't just the oil, it was the active participation of the widow, her willingness to act on faith despite overwhelming odds. She did her part, however small it seemed, and God did His. So, as you go about your day, consider where your last drop might be, and remember the widow's pot of oil. Trust that with God, even the smallest beginning can lead to limitless provision. What part of this story resonates with you? Or perhaps you have your own pot of oil story to share, a time when your last drop became limitless? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this message brought you a moment of peace or encouragement, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it, and perhaps subscribe for more stories of faith and hope. Until next time, may you experience the limitless provision of God in your life.